Hello, Army! Some stories never become global headlines, yet they leave questions that refuse to disappear. Across different countries, Jimin of BTS has faced moments that many fans believe crossed the line into racism or xenophobia. But what really happened, and what does the evidence actually reveal? This is K-Pop Fact Today, where every claim is examined beyond the rumors.
Number 7. Canada. The atmosphere was tense long before the discussion reached mainstream headlines. It began not with a single dramatic confrontation, but with scattered incidents that slowly accumulated across online platforms, public events, and fan communities. Canada has long been recognized as one of the world's most multicultural countries, a nation that officially promotes diversity and inclusion. Yet, official records and public discussions also show that incidents of racism and anti-Asian discrimination continue to occur despite those values. Against this complicated backdrop, Jimin of BTS occasionally became the subject of hostile comments and xenophobic reactions from a small number of individuals, particularly during periods when BTS was reaching unprecedented levels of international success. As BTS dominated global charts, sold out stadiums, and expanded their influence beyond the music industry, criticism directed at the group increasingly blurred the line between ordinary celebrity backlash and comments targeting their ethnicity and Korean identity. Various screenshots that circulated online showed insults referencing Asian stereotypes rather than Jimin's music or performances. Although many of these posts originated from anonymous social media accounts, they spread rapidly enough to trigger widespread concern among ARMY around the world. Public records indicate that many of those offensive posts were eventually removed, while several accounts were suspended for violating platform policies. Nevertheless, questions remained about how many similar comments disappeared before receiving public attention. Canadian media also reported a broader rise in anti-Asian discrimination during the early 2020s, particularly following the COVID-19 pandemic, creating an environment where online hostility toward Asian public figures became a topic of wider discussion rather than an isolated issue. Some cultural analysts argue that celebrities like Jimin often become symbolic targets because of their enormous visibility. According to this perspective, attacks directed at him were not necessarily motivated by personal dislike alone, but were sometimes influenced by existing prejudice against Asians that had already been present within certain parts of society. Other experts urged caution, emphasizing that anonymous internet comments should never be interpreted as representing an entire country. Official statements from Canadian institutions consistently rejected racism and encouraged inclusion, while countless Canadian ARMY publicly defended Jimin through social media campaigns, charity projects, and positive community events celebrating Korean culture. Hashtags supporting Jimin quickly outnumbered many of the hateful posts, demonstrating that public opinion was far more diverse than viral screenshots alone suggested. Some observers also noted how social media algorithms amplified controversy, causing a handful of offensive comments to appear far more widespread than they actually were. Others argue the opposite, that viral algorithms merely exposed attitudes that had previously remained hidden beneath the surface. The debate continues because measuring the true scale of online prejudice remains extremely difficult. A few documented incidents can spark international outrage, while thousands of supportive voices often receive far less attention. Throughout these discussions, Jimin himself chose not to publicly respond to most of the incidents, maintaining the same reserved public image that has characterized much of his career. His silence has been interpreted in different ways. Some believe it reflects professionalism and emotional restraint, while others see it as evidence of the difficult reality faced by global celebrities who frequently become targets of anonymous hostility. Regardless of interpretation, the available evidence does not support the conclusion that Canada as a nation was racist toward Jimin. Instead, documented discussions point to specific incidents involving certain individuals that became highly visible because of BTS's extraordinary global popularity. Even so, one unsettling question continues to echo among fans and observers alike. When anonymous prejudice spreads across millions of screens in only a few hours, where does individual hatred end, and where does society's responsibility truly begin?
Number 6. Spain. As stadium lights faded and social media activity surged across Europe, another series of discussions quietly emerged, this time involving Spain. Known internationally for its vibrant music festivals, passionate football culture, and growing K-pop fan base, Spain has welcomed countless Korean artists over the years. Yet official reports and broader studies on discrimination have also acknowledged that racist incidents still occur within parts of Spanish society, particularly in online spaces where anonymity often removes accountability. It was within this complex environment that Jimin of BTS became the subject of several controversial moments that many fans described as xenophobic rather than simple celebrity criticism. None of these incidents represented the views of Spain as a whole, but they sparked widespread debate about how Asian artists are sometimes perceived outside their home country. The controversy intensified whenever BTS achieved another international milestone. Every record broken, every award won, and every chart conquered attracted not only admiration, but also increasingly hostile reactions from a small number of online users. Several posts that circulated across platforms included remarks mocking Korean language, facial features, or Asian stereotypes instead of discussing Jimin's artistry. According to archived screenshots shared widely by fans, the attacks focused less on music and more on identity. While many of the original posts were later deleted or became inaccessible, their circulation had already fueled international conversations about racism in digital communities. Various observers pointed out that social media often magnifies isolated incidents, making a relatively small number of offensive comments appear representative of an entire nation. Others argued that such incidents should not be dismissed simply because they originated from anonymous accounts, since online hostility can still have real psychological and cultural consequences. Spanish Army quickly organized coordinated reporting campaigns against abusive accounts, while simultaneously promoting messages celebrating diversity and Korean culture. In many cases, supportive voices dramatically outnumbered the hateful ones, demonstrating that public opinion within Spain was far from unified. Cultural commentators also noted that the globalization of K-pop has challenged traditional entertainment industries across multiple regions, occasionally provoking defensive reactions from individuals uncomfortable with the growing influence of Asian popular culture. According to several experts, xenophobic remarks aimed at Korean celebrities frequently emerge during periods when those artists dominate global media attention, suggesting that prejudice may become intertwined with broader cultural anxieties rather than personal opinions about a single performer. However, official evidence does not indicate that Spain as a country endorsed or encouraged discrimination against Jimin. On the contrary, public institutions and many Spanish organizations have repeatedly supported diversity initiatives and condemned racism in all forms. The distinction between isolated acts and national attitudes therefore remains essential. Nevertheless, for many fans, the emotional impact of seeing hateful comments targeting Jimin's ethnicity rather than his work was impossible to ignore. Some argue that the incidents exposed prejudices that continue to exist beneath the surface of online discourse, while others believe they reflected only the behavior of a vocal minority seeking attention through controversy. The debate became even more complicated because algorithms tend to reward emotionally charged content, allowing offensive posts to spread much faster than thoughtful conversations or positive messages. As a result, isolated remarks sometimes reached millions of viewers within hours, creating an impression of widespread hostility even when the majority strongly disagreed. Throughout these controversies, Jimin maintained his characteristic silence, neither publicly confronting individual incidents nor engaging directly with those responsible. His decision left room for endless interpretation. Was it a calculated effort to avoid giving attention to hate, or simply the quiet resilience expected from one of the world's most recognizable performers? The available evidence cannot provide a definitive answer. What remains clear is that the documented incidents involved specific individuals rather than the Spanish population as a whole. Yet the larger mystery persists. When prejudice hides behind anonymous profiles and spreads faster than facts themselves, how can anyone truly measure the boundary between isolated hatred and a much deeper societal problem? Number 5. Singapore. The skyline reflected thousands of lights across Marina Bay, presenting the image of a modern nation celebrated for its safety, multicultural society, and strict laws against many forms of public misconduct. Yet beneath that polished international reputation, conversations surrounding race and ethnicity have never completely disappeared.
Official reports, academic studies, and public discussions have long acknowledged that while Singapore promotes racial harmony as a national principle, isolated incidents of prejudice and insensitive behavior still occasionally surface, particularly in digital spaces where anonymity often encourages more extreme language. It was within this broader context that Jimin of BTS became connected to several online controversies that some fans described as racist or xenophobic. Importantly, documented evidence does not indicate that Singapore as a country targeted Jimin. Instead, the discussion centered on the actions of a limited number of individuals and online communities whose comments spread rapidly across social media. As BTS continued breaking international records and expanding their influence throughout Southeast Asia, Jimin's immense popularity also made him one of the most visible faces of modern K-pop. That visibility attracted overwhelming admiration, but it also exposed him to criticism that sometimes moved beyond music and into attacks referencing his Korean identity. Archived screenshots shared by fans showed offensive remarks containing Asian stereotypes, mockery of appearance, and dismissive comments about Korean culture rather than meaningful criticism of his performances. Although many of the original posts were later removed or became unavailable, copies continued circulating online, fueling debates among international ARMY. Various observers argue that these incidents demonstrated how prejudice can still exist even in societies that officially emphasize multiculturalism. Others cautioned against drawing broad conclusions, noting that social media often magnifies the loudest and most inflammatory voices, while ignoring the overwhelming majority who reject discriminatory behavior. The distinction proved crucial because Singapore is also home to one of the most active and supportive BTS fan communities in Southeast Asia. During periods when hostile comments gained attention, countless Singaporean ARMY responded by organizing reporting campaigns, promoting respectful discussions, and sharing messages celebrating Korean culture and diversity. In many instances, supportive posts significantly outnumbered the hateful ones, illustrating how viral controversy can distort perceptions of public opinion. Cultural analysts further explain that internationally successful artists frequently become symbolic figures in wider conversations about globalization. According to this perspective, attacks directed at Jimin were sometimes less about him personally and more about resistance from a small minority uncomfortable with the growing influence of Asian entertainment across global markets. Several experts also highlighted the role of algorithm-driven platforms, where emotionally provocative content is rewarded with greater visibility, regardless of whether it reflects majority opinion. Consequently, a relatively small collection of offensive posts could appear to represent an entire society, despite lacking widespread support. Public institutions within Singapore have consistently emphasized racial harmony and social cohesion, and there's no official record suggesting state endorsement of discrimination toward Jimin or BTS. Nevertheless, the online controversies became another reminder that even countries recognized for multicultural values are not completely immune from isolated expressions of prejudice. Throughout these discussions, Jimin himself remained publicly silent, neither addressing individual comments nor participating in the debates unfolding across social media. That silence invited countless interpretations. Some viewed it as quiet professionalism, while others believed it reflected an understanding that responding directly to anonymous hostility often grants it even greater visibility. Whatever the motivation, his restraint contrasted sharply with the intensity of the conversations taking place online. For many observers, the most unsettling aspect was not the existence of a handful of hateful comments, but how quickly they spread across borders, languages, and digital platforms before facts could catch up. The available evidence ultimately points toward isolated incidents involving specific individuals rather than hostility from Singapore as a nation. Yet one question continues to linger in the background. When a few anonymous voices can shape international perception within hours, are they merely reflecting hidden prejudice or creating an illusion far larger than reality itself?
Number 4. Japan.
The stories surrounding Japan unfolded against one of the most complicated historical and cultural backdrops in East Asia. As neon lights illuminated the streets of Tokyo and millions continued to follow the latest trends in music, fashion, and entertainment, another reality existed beneath the surface. Japan has long maintained one of the largest K-pop fan communities outside South Korea, and BTS has consistently enjoyed remarkable commercial success in the country through sold-out concerts, chart-topping albums, and millions of loyal supporters. At the same time, historians and political analysts have repeatedly noted that historical tensions between Japan and South Korea continue to influence public discourse, particularly on social media, where discussions about history, nationalism, and identity can quickly become emotionally charged. It was within this broader context, not through any official action by Japan as a nation, that Jimin occasionally became the target of racist or xenophobic remarks from a limited number of individuals. Public records and archived online discussions show that several controversies involving BTS in Japan attracted significant media attention, especially when political sensitivities intersected with entertainment. One of the most widely discussed incidents involved renewed debate over a photograph of Jimin wearing a shirt that referenced Korean independence and the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The image resurfaced years after it had been taken, leading to intense public debate across Japanese media and social platforms. While the controversy primarily centered on historical interpretation rather than race, many observers noted that the discussion soon expanded beyond criticism of the shirt itself. Some online comments shifted towards insults aimed at Jimin's Korean identity, using ethnic stereotypes and derogatory language unrelated to the original issue. Cultural experts emphasize that criticism of a public figure's actions is fundamentally different from attacks targeting nationality or ethnicity. Yet on anonymous platforms, that distinction often disappeared. Several offensive posts were widely shared by international fans, who argued that the conversation had evolved into xenophobia rather than legitimate public debate. Others cautioned that viral screenshots represented only a fraction of overall public opinion and should not be interpreted as reflecting the attitudes of Japanese society as a whole. Official evidence strongly supports that distinction. Japan is home to millions of BTS fans, and many Japanese army openly defended Jimin throughout the controversy. Supportive messages, fan projects, and charitable campaigns continued despite the heated discussions, illustrating that admiration for BTS remained widespread. Industry analysts also pointed out that Japanese consumers continued purchasing BTS albums and merchandise in large numbers, demonstrating that commercial support for the group remains remarkably strong despite periodic controversies. Nevertheless, the incident became an example frequently cited by scholars examining how unresolved historical disputes can unexpectedly intersect with modern pop culture. According to several commentators, global celebrities sometimes become symbolic representatives of their countries, causing political disagreements to spill over into conversations about individuals who had little direct involvement in those historical conflicts. Social media further complicated the situation by amplifying the most emotional and confrontational voices, allowing extreme opinions to dominate public attention, while more balanced perspectives struggled to gain similar visibility. Throughout the controversy, Jimin himself offered no direct public response to the racist comments that circulated online. His silence became part of the narrative, interpreted by some as professionalism and by others as an unavoidable consequence of navigating controversies that extended far beyond music. Official records contain no evidence that Japan as a country endorsed discrimination against Jimin. Instead, the documented incidents point to specific individuals and online communities whose comments became internationally visible because of the enormous popularity of BTS. Yet the broader question remains difficult to answer. When historical memory, national identity, internet anonymity, and global celebrity collide in the same moment, where does legitimate public criticism end, and where does prejudice quietly begin?
Number 3. Israel. The discussion surrounding Israel emerged in a very different context from the previous entries. Rather than beginning with a single viral post or one widely reported confrontation, it developed during periods of heightened international tension, when conversations about politics, conflict, and global celebrities increasingly overlapped on social media. As global attention shifted toward events in the Middle East, many public figures, including K-pop artists, became the subject of intense online scrutiny, despite having no direct involvement in political affairs. Jimin of BTS was among those whose name occasionally appeared in these debates, not because of official statements he had made, but because of expectations from different groups that celebrities should publicly address international conflicts. According to publicly available discussions, some online users expressed hostile comments toward Jimin after BTS remains largely silent on certain geopolitical issues. While criticism of celebrities over public silence is not uncommon, portions of the conversation escalated beyond disagreement and included remarks targeting his Korean identity or using ethnic stereotypes rather than addressing the original topic. It is important to distinguish these documented online incidents from broader claims about an entire country. There is no credible evidence that Israel as a nation or its institutions engaged in racist actions against Jimin. Instead, the controversy centered on the behavior of certain individuals across online platforms during an emotionally charged period of international debate. Analysts who study digital communication have observed that global conflicts often create environments where public figures become symbolic targets, regardless of their actual involvement. In such situations, artists with worldwide recognition can find themselves drawn into political narratives simply because of their visibility. As screenshots of hostile comments circulated among ARMY communities, some fans described the language as xenophobic, arguing that criticism had shifted away from political expectations and toward Jimin's ethnicity and Korean background. Others urged caution, noting that anonymous social media accounts rarely represent broader public opinion and that viral posts can exaggerate the scale of an issue. Throughout these discussions, many supporters, including fans from Israel, publicly defended Jimin and emphasized that the actions of a few individuals should never be interpreted as reflecting an entire nation. Fan communities continued organizing charitable projects, streaming campaigns, and cultural initiatives that demonstrated widespread support for BTS despite the online controversy. Researchers have repeatedly warned that algorithms on major social platforms tend to amplify emotionally charged content, allowing a relatively small number of offensive posts to receive disproportionate attention. As a result, isolated incidents may appear far more widespread than they truly are. This dynamic has become increasingly common in the digital age, where controversy often spreads faster than clarification. Jimin himself did not publicly respond to these online exchanges, maintaining the same reserved approach that has characterized much of his public career. His silence left room for speculation, with some interpreting it as professionalism and others viewing it as a practical decision to avoid fueling further controversy. Whatever the explanation, available evidence indicates that the incidents involved specific online users rather than official policies or the broader population of Israel. Even so, the episode illustrates how quickly global political tensions can intersect with entertainment, transforming internationally recognized artists into unwilling participants in debates far beyond the stage. And perhaps that is the most unsettling question of all. In an era where every global event can instantly pull celebrities into the center of online conflict, how can anyone clearly separate legitimate criticism from prejudice directed at identity itself?
Number 2. France. France has often been described as one of Europe's cultural capitals, a country where art, fashion, music, and freedom of expression have shaped global influence for centuries. It is also a nation where BTS has enjoyed remarkable popularity, attracting enormous crowds, record-breaking album sales, and one of the largest ARMY communities in Europe. Yet, beneath that image of cultural openness, official reports and academic studies have also documented continuing concerns about racism and discrimination, including incidents directed toward people of Asian descent. It was within this broader social context that Jimin occasionally became associated with discussions about xenophobia, although the available evidence points to isolated incidents involving specific individuals rather than hostility from France as a whole. As BTS's international fame continued to grow, every major appearance, award, and social media trend generated enormous public attention. With that visibility came an unavoidable consequence. The group increasingly attracted both admiration and hostility. During several periods of heightened online activity, screenshots shared by fans showed offensive comments posted by anonymous users that mocked Jimin's Korean identity, appearance, or ethnicity, rather than offering criticism of his music or performances. These remarks quickly spread across multiple platforms, prompting widespread concern among ARMY and reigniting conversations about anti-Asian prejudice in online spaces. Many of the original posts were later deleted, reported, or became inaccessible, yet archived copies continued circulating within fan communities, ensuring that the controversy remained visible long after the accounts responsible had disappeared. Cultural researchers have frequently noted that online anonymity can encourage expressions of prejudice that individuals might never display in public, making digital platforms an increasingly important space for studying discrimination. At the same time, experts caution that viral social media content rarely provides an accurate measure of broader public opinion. A handful of inflammatory posts can reach millions of viewers, creating the impression of widespread hostility even when the overwhelming majority rejects such behavior. That distinction proved especially important in France, where countless fans publicly defended Jimin through coordinated reporting campaigns, positive social media initiatives, and charitable projects organized under the BTS fandom. French ARMY consistently emphasized that hateful comments from a small number of users should never define an entire nation, known for its diverse population and active cultural exchange. Analysts also pointed out that BTS's extraordinary success in Europe challenged long-standing assumptions about the global entertainment industry, occasionally provoking negative reactions from individuals resistant to the growing influence of Asian popular culture. According to several observers, some hostile remarks directed at Jimin reflected broader Asian stereotypes rather than genuine criticism of his artistic work. Nevertheless, no official evidence suggests that French institutions or the country itself engaged in discriminatory actions against him. Public discourse in France has repeatedly included strong condemnations of racism, while organizations and community groups continue promoting inclusion and equality. Throughout these online controversies, Jimin maintained his characteristic silence, choosing not to publicly engage with anonymous comments or escalating debates. His response, or lack of one, became another subject of discussion. Some interpreted it as remarkable composure under pressure, while others argued that responding would only amplify the visibility of those seeking attention through offensive behavior. Regardless of interpretation, the available evidence consistently indicates that the documented incidents originated from isolated individuals rather than representing French society as a whole. Yet the controversy continues to raise an unsettling question that extends far beyond one celebrity or one country. If a few anonymous voices possess the power to shape international headlines and influence public perception, are they exposing hidden prejudice or merely exploiting the mechanics of the internet, where outrage almost always travels faster than the truth?
Number 1. United States. No other country appears more frequently in discussions surrounding Jimin's experiences with public hostility than the United States. As the world's largest entertainment market, America became one of BTS's most significant milestones, transforming the group from regional superstars into global cultural icons through sold-out stadium tours, multiple Billboard #1 albums, television appearances, and historic award show performances. Yet the same country that offered some of the group's greatest achievements also exposed them to one of the largest volumes of public scrutiny. It is important to distinguish documented reality from online exaggeration. There is no credible evidence that the United States as a nation was racist toward Jimin. However, because of BTS's immense visibility in the American media landscape, Jimin became one of many Asian celebrities who occasionally face racist or xenophobic remarks from certain individuals, particularly across social media and comment sections. Official reports from U.S. institutions and independent researchers have documented a broader rise in anti-Asian discrimination during the early 2020s, especially following the COVID-19 pandemic. Within that wider climate, many Asian public figures, including musicians, actors, athletes, and influencers, became targets of offensive stereotypes and hateful language online. Jimin's global fame inevitably placed him within that environment. Numerous archived screenshots shared by fans showed anonymous users posting insults aimed not at his musical ability, but at his Korean heritage, appearance, or ethnicity. Some comments repeated long-standing anti-Asian stereotypes, while others questioned whether Asian artists deserved mainstream success in Western entertainment. Many of those posts were eventually removed for violating platform policies, and several accounts disappeared entirely. Even so, the images continued circulating among international fan communities, fueling ongoing debates about racism in digital spaces. Media analysts have repeatedly observed that celebrities with enormous visibility often become symbolic targets for broader cultural tensions. According to this perspective, hostility directed at Jimin was not always motivated by personal opinions about him, but sometimes reflected resistance from a small minority uncomfortable with the rapidly expanding influence of Korean popular culture in the global entertainment industry. BTS's unprecedented commercial success challenged traditional expectations about language, culture, and international music markets. Songs performed primarily in Korean reached the top of American charts, sold millions of albums, and filled stadiums across the country. For many observers, this represented an extraordinary cultural achievement. For a limited number of critics, however, it became a source of resentment expressed through comments that crossed the line into xenophobia. Yet the broader picture tells a very different story. The United States is also home to one of the largest and most dedicated ARMY communities in the world. Millions of American fans have supported BTS for years through concerts, charity campaigns, streaming projects, and cultural events celebrating Korean music and culture. When racist remarks targeting Jimin gained attention online, many American fans responded immediately by reporting abusive accounts, promoting messages of solidarity, and publicly condemning discrimination. Their response demonstrated an important reality. The actions of a vocal minority should never be confused with the views of an entire nation. Researchers studying digital communication have also emphasized the role of recommendation algorithms, which often reward outrage with greater visibility. As a result, a relatively small number of hateful comments can appear far more widespread than they actually are, creating an illusion of consensus where none exists. This phenomenon complicates efforts to measure the true scale of online prejudice, making it difficult to separate isolated incidents from broader social attitudes. Throughout every controversy, Jimin remained publicly composed. He rarely acknowledged individual attacks and instead continued focusing on performances, recordings, and interactions with fans. That silence has become one of the defining aspects of his public image. Some interpret it as emotional resilience, while others believe it reflects an understanding that responding directly to anonymous hostility often strengthens the very attention such comments seek. Regardless of interpretation, the available evidence consistently shows that the documented racist incidents originated from specific individuals rather than official institutions or the American public as a whole. Even so, the United States occupies the top position because its massive media ecosystem amplified these incidents more than anywhere else, allowing isolated acts of prejudice to become global headlines within hours. And perhaps the greatest mystery remains unresolved. In a world where fame can magnify both admiration and hatred at an imaginable speed, is it the prejudice itself that has grown larger, or simply our ability to witness it in real time?